There's a lot of unfortunate things that happened leading up to the Apalachee School shooting. One of the more disturbing details is how the shooter got the gun into the school. And that's what we're going to talk about today as I fill you in not only on that, but there's new details about the gun, one of which I've never heard of. And obviously, I have a gun channel, so I know a little bit about this stuff. But this is one of those details I've never heard. Maybe some of y'all can help me out. We're going to look at the gun too, and just what happened just minutes prior to him opening fire. It's really a very sad situation, obviously. So I'm going to handle it with care, but I also just want to give you the facts laced with my opinion. And no matter if you agree or disagree with me, let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. How did he get this gun in the classroom at all? Well, apparently he put it in his backpack. Now, an AR style rifle, they're saying assault style rifle. They can use that term for any number of things. But one thing that's interesting is they say the gun could not be broken down. Now we have a very short glimpse and a grainy image, as good as a cell phone can do in a quick pan over, from roughly 10 feet away. It's not great, but what I see, even trying to clean this image up, it looks like a traditional AR-15. You can see what looks like a 223 5.56 magazine right there, or 300 blackout. I'm gonna venture to say it was a 5.56 or 223, but regardless, that's what the magazine looks like. Looks like towards the front or the left-hand side of the screen, you have a fairly long handguard. The end of the barrel looks like you have a vertical grip, and then coming back, of course, magazine, pistol grip, and then the stock, which it looks fully collapsed if it is a collapsible at all, which most of the time they are. There are reports that the gun was sticking out of the backpack, so he had something over the end of the barrel that was concealing it. I don't know if it was a hoodie, not quite sure what it was, but unfortunately, that's what we're hearing right now, is that it was actually sticking out the end of the backpack. At first, before I read that detail, I was like, how did they not know? I mean, what kind of backpack was this at first? That's my first thought. I'm like, Jesus, is it an actual, like, gun-shaped backpack? Because there are backpacks, more tactical bags like that, used for hunting and other things like that, and we know he's a hunter. But another interesting detail is they said that this assault-style rifle can't be broken down. Now, pretty much every type of AR that's on the market has two pins. You push those pins out, and that allows you to break the gun down. So whatever type of gun this is, either the pins are really tight and the police couldn't get those. I mean, that's common, I mean, it's not like every police officer is some kind of gun expert. They're just not. Should they be? Well, maybe, but that comes down to training and stuff. I'm not saying that at all, though. It's like a speculation here. But it could be that the pins are just really tight, or maybe it's an AR alternative type of rifle. Looking at it, you have several type of AR alternatives that can't be broken down. You have guns like Zastavas, M85s, and Mini 14 is another one, but it doesn't look like any of those. You also have guns like the XCR, right? That's a little bit different type of AR alternative, so maybe it's something like that. I would venture to say that maybe it was in 9mm, because a lot of the 9mm carbines that look like ARs don't necessarily break down like an AR. Some of them do, but there's a lot that don't. If it's a 9mm or pistol caliber AR style, it's not necessarily going to use the same type of recoil and gas system, right? A lot of those just use direct blowback, but either way, it doesn't look like that. The magazines that I see on the floor look like traditional AR mags, and the gun itself looks like some kind of traditional AR. So it can't be broken down. He put it in a backpack, it was sticking out, and he was covering it with something. There's this video that's floating around that actually shows Colt and his dad hunting. So I'm like, well, maybe this is the gun. It's a 450 Bushmaster, which essentially 450 is the caliber, right? And that's not necessarily an odd caliber for an AR, but it's not the most common. The most common is going to be 5.56 or 223. So I do not believe that that is the rifle that we see on the ground right here. it lines up perfectly with the timing, because we know the dad bought the AR just 7 months after his kid was pinpointed. Out of 500 million users on Discord, his son was the one that was pinpointed on Discord making threats to his middle school. Of course, he denied it. The police couldn't pursue it any further. But 7 months after that, for Christmas, he buys him an AR. The problem with the Bushmaster that we see in the video, though, is that it actually has a magnified scope, right? Whether it's a 10 by 28 or something like that. It's not an LPVO, and it's certainly not some kind of red dot. It's more of a long-range piece of glass on top of this gun. And clearly, when we look at the photo of the gun on the ground, he's got some kind of boxy style red dot. I don't know, EOTech or some kind of Holocent, whatever it is. It's clearly not the glass that's on the gun in this video that we see. And of course, the video is disturbing knowing what we know now. If you just watch it without hindsight, you're like, okay, sounds like a proud dad. There's some gun handling issues that I see in the video, but regardless, that's like the last thing on my mind when I try to watch it without hindsight. It really is disturbing knowing what we know now. So regardless, that's what we know about the gun and how he got it in there. He carried it in along with every other kid. And this is where I talk about, what can we do to stop stuff like this? Red flag laws wouldn't have worked. Background checks certainly would have worked because the gun was bought by the dad. And then he gave it to his kid 7 months after the investigation. Banning the gun certainly wouldn't have worked. There's 10, 20, 30 million of these guns in circulation already. So unless you're knocking on doors, taking guns away, which would not be a great idea, I don't see that happening either, and that wouldn't work. But here's a couple of real common sense things that would work. Now, what about clear backpacks? This is something that could work. The only reservation I have about that, I guess, is girls at that age. Of course, they have things going on and they carry things that they don't want others seeing. Okay, so I totally understand that. You could put that in some kind of zippered bag or something where you can't see through it. So there are little things that girls could do to handle their feminine stuff, right? But for the most part, if you have a clear backpack policy, that could work. That's a simple thing where, unfortunately, we got to see in your bags, right? And that's a way where you can check bags and you don't have to stand there every single morning and individually check them. Metal detectors, right? It's unfortunate to me that the Bipartisan Safer Community Act that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris passed has nothing in the way of security. It has some mental health measures, which I think are great, but nothing in the way of security. Doesn't guarantee resource officers at school, doesn't guarantee metal detectors, right? These are things that could save a lot of lives. You got to remember too that we protect everything we care about in this country with men and guns, right? That's how we protect them. And unless you work for the DHS or unless you just can't pass your training, typically we can trust those men with guns to protect important political people, right? Former presidents. Again, if we have the right people in place and we don't leave buildings open 150 yards away from where political people are standing, regardless, generally that's how we protect our money, presidents, leaders from other countries, everything. But we refuse to recognize that our kids, the most precious asset we have in this country, can't be afforded the right to have the same type of protection. That really bugs me. So having resource officers at schools is absolutely crucial. That's something we should do tomorrow. The other thing is concealed carry in schools. Now, there's a lot of people that just kind of shake their heads at this notion. How dare you even think about recommending teachers carrying guns at schools? A lot of teachers already carry guns. They just are not allowed to carry them at schools. But we expect teachers to body block, which a lot of the times they will for their kids, right? If a shooter comes in, they will put their entire bodies in front of these kids to protect them. There's always a hero that is made out of one of these tragedies, and almost always it is a teacher. or a resource officer, right? So why should we leave them defenseless? If they're willing to go through some kind of special training, right? You have a gun around kids, okay, you gotta know what you're doing. I totally understand that. But if you already have your concealed weapons permit, maybe you go through shooting class, make sure that you're competent, you know how to use the gun, make sure that it is in a holster that is secured, all of that kind of stuff. Why do we need to leave them defenseless? Why are we okay with walking into a bank, or we're okay with the White House or the Capitol or any number of buildings being protected by men with guns, and we feel good about that, but we wouldn't feel good about regular citizens who have the right to carry, protecting our kids inside of those schools? I will never understand that logic, and if you disagree with me, let me know why down below. I want to hear a reasonable argument for that, because I think teachers that are armed, just knowing that they're armed, letting students know, some of our teachers, you'll never know which ones, are armed. Just knowing that is going to deter some kids. They want soft targets. They don't want resistance. And most of the time, a lot of the time, what you'll see, I can't say most of the time, but a lot of the time what you'll see is as soon as resistance is shown, like the Apalachee School shooting, the shooter gave up immediately, or they take themselves out. That's a lot of the time what you will see, because they don't want to be shot back at. They just want to do the shooting. So boom, there you go. Again, if you disagree with me, let me know what you think down below. This is just my opinion, and let me know what kind of gun you think this can possibly be looking at these pictures. Big thanks to each and every one of you. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.